Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, June 14th, 2020, and today I'm going to be doing an updated 2020 Electoral College projection. I know it may seem redundant to do it twice a month, but the election is going to be soon, 4 to 5 months away, and it is important that we do update this electoral map because what this last month has shown us is that the Electoral College can shift very dramatically over a very short period of time. The map that I had out on June 1st could be very different than the map that I showed you today, and it could be very different in 2 weeks' time. A number of things are happening now. We have a convention coming up next month and then the following month in August, so we should see around 2 convention bumps, and it'd be great to go ahead and analyze the map before and after the convention. So that'd be very helpful in terms of bi-weekly videos. On top of that, I will say that this overall electoral map needs to be updated more than, I guess, once a month. So I have a real quick question about what you guys want to use for the style on here. Today I'm going to be using grayscale, but if you guys do have any alternatives or prefer one or the other, I've usually used dark, but again, it's up entirely to you guys. I just thought grayscale would be a little bit different. This is the dark theme, grayscale, terminal, white, contrast, metallic. And default. So I honestly think that I'm mixed between dark and grayscale. Right now I'm going to use grayscale. In terms of the chart down here, I don't know if you guys would like that, or would you rather have a vertical version or a pie chart or a pie chart on the bottom, a donut, things like that. But for right now, I'm going to use the horizontal battle for the I guess results that I'm going to be putting up because it's a lot more informative and it's a lot easier, I guess, to understand than what currently is I guess like the other formats that we have. When I made 270 to win videos, they were horrible. I mean, not necessarily the video content itself, but just the way that the entire 270 to website was. The bar was so tiny, and I don't necessarily know what you guys personally want. A pie chart might be more appealing, but again, we're just going to go ahead and focus on the election at hand. So the 2020 election has pretty much evolved into being something very surprising. A number of things have happened within the past 2 weeks that have shifted the country bluer. In terms of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they've pretty much stayed the same in terms of candidate, I guess, personalities. Neither of them really got more optimistic or more enthusiastic as a particular candidate. Joe Biden just seems to be more appealing to some Republicans who are turning away from supporting Donald Trump, a number of independents who are on the fence about either voting for Trump again or voting for Trump the first time. A lot of them are moving back over into the Democratic column, and obviously a lot of Democrats are a lot more solidified in their primary choice. Joe Biden officially clinched the nomination, so also have to mention that the last time I made a video about this, he did not officially have the nomination, so a lot can happen in 2 weeks. So we'll start this out by going ahead and characterizing all of the safe Democratic states. We pretty much know how these are going to go. I know some people may be disagreeing with some of these being considered safe. I understand that states like Oregon and states over some parts in the Northeast were narrower than 15% in 2016, but I will say that in 2020, it'll probably be larger than 15%, especially with the increase in support for Vice President Biden. That includes Maine's 1st District. And that's pretty much all of the safe Democratic states. There are some safe Republican states we do need to characterize. Again, the map never really changes because the American electorate is very stagnant. They do like to vote for the same candidates time and time again. While you may be seeing some of these states considered safe, I will move them back over into the likely column just because that's how I personally see them going for the 2020 election. For example, states such as South Carolina, Mississippi. We could very well see states such as Missouri and Kansas narrow up less than 15%, but still nearing around 13-14% in favor of Donald Trump. Indiana, surprisingly, I don't think will narrow up less than 15%. It is possible, but current data suggests that I wouldn't necessarily see Joe Biden being able to do that. Mike Pence didn't necessarily add too much value for Indiana in 2016, but I think he might have a more positive impact in 2020, given that he's the incumbent vice president and it is your home state. Even though he was what I guess the people of Indiana viewed as an unpopular governor, obviously a lot can change in 4 years. I mean, a lot has changed in the past week alone nationwide. I do need to figure out a little bit more about Montana personally, but it's still 3 electoral votes. It doesn't really matter at the end. And if it is considered likely, again, won't change the fact that Trump wins it regardless. For the Biden campaign, however, they have a number of likely states, a number of states that I'm very comfortable characterizing immediately for the Democratic Party in 2020. States that Hillary Clinton narrowly won. States like New Hampshire and Virginia and Colorado and New Mexico, and Nevada. These are all states that I am very comfortable characterizing as likely for the Democratic Party. I'd actually probably expect Nevada to be the closest out of all of this. Again, with the drug-infested den comment in New Hampshire, a lot of people say, who cares? Number one, the Black Lives Matter movement probably won't impact New Hampshire voters as much as they would in a state such as North Carolina or Georgia. But again, the Democratic Party is using comments Donald Trump has made 2016 in the past, and definitely a 2017 comment could be reused in a political ad. And that's the one line that I really think would turn off a number of swing voters. He didn't win it once. Why would they vote for someone who considers the state to be a drug-infested den? Again, it's one comment, but one comment has broken elections in the past for particular candidates. For Virginia, however, the state just increasingly turns Democratic. Same thing in Colorado and New Mexico. Pretty strongholds for the Clinton campaign. I think Nevada will be targeted by the Trump campaign. I think that a lot of the inside polling data there suggests that the Republican Party realistically has a shot at Nevada. Honestly, I don't think that's true. But again, not up to me, but I will say that Joe Biden will probably win by a likely margin. Out of all 5 of those states, I think Nevada will be the closest, but regardless, we'll still go to the Biden campaign. For the Trump campaign, he does have some other areas where he can win in, but we're actually going to go ahead and move over into some other likely states. Minnesota and Michigan, I am now comfortable enough to characterize, and Maine at large actually, comfortable enough to characterize all of these states as likely states. Maine at large will possibly return back to the safe column as we progress if things start to increase for Vice President Biden. It was around a 17-point swing between the 2012 margin and the 2016 margin in favor of the GOP. Could 100% see Joe Biden winning back almost all of those voters. For Minnesota and Michigan, again, Trump did not carry Minnesota in 2016. It is going to be more solid. Joe Biden's primary endorsement came off the back of Amy Klobuchar. She won with over 60% of the vote, so she is very popular in a state that handed Hillary Clinton a narrow victory in 2016. And I think her endorsement will hold a lot of weight, and I think that the Democratic Party won't forget and neglect the Rust Belt as they did 4 years ago. For the state of Michigan, I think that this state, considering number one, that Trump's won this by the smallest amount, and considering the fact the influence of Gretchen Whitmer and a number of other top Democrats, they are not going to forget about the Rust Belt again. And the Democratic Party held on to a number of these states for nearly 30 years. One neglectful election does not mean that these are all of a sudden solid Republican states. I understand Donald Trump may have a chance on election day, but as it's looking today, middle of June, it's not looking too likely. As we go ahead and move across the country, Donald Trump does have some areas, a little bit of a silver lining, I guess, for his reelection bid. He will carry Texas. I'm thinking Texas actually narrows down to a lean margin. I have moved it back and forth between lean and likely in the past couple of months because it is very difficult to gauge a state as big as Texas, number one, and as rapidly growing as Texas. Yes, Texas has moved further to the left in recent elections, but you also have to note that what if Republicans come out in full force? Based off the data that we have right now, it looks like the Democratic Party will be the one coming out in full force, but it's not enough to flip Texas. A very solid Republican state, might be super competitive in 2024. It's going to be competitive now, but realistically, I think that the Democrats will peak off around 48-49%. Donald Trump will still carry Texas. So that puts Donald Trump at 163 electoral votes, Joe Biden at 248. As we move over into some other states, Donald Trump, I think, is probably going to lose states such as Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Arizona are all states that will go to Vice President Biden. That officially makes him the next president in this scenario. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. These are 3 states that I'm considering lean. Arizona probably will be voting to the left of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania of Arizona. But I think that all 3 of them will be on the Democratic side in 2020. Wisconsin, number 1, Trump won it by less than 1%. His approval is abysmal in the state itself. The Democrats proved themselves very worthy in 2018. And I think that with increased African-American turnout, despite them, the African-American voters making up only 6.5% of the population, or the population, not voters, in states like Wisconsin, minimal improvements could win the Democrats in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania also was won by less than 1%. Arizona just has rapidly changed from 2012 being a 9-point margin, 2016 being a 3-point margin, 2018 being a Democrat plus 3 margin, and winning back the House of Representatives in Arizona. I mean, it was a really good performance for Democrats in 2018. I think a lot of that energy will be carried into 2020. And Joe Biden as a centrist, Kyrsten Sinema was a centrist. Centrists typically win in Arizona. Take a look at primary performances, House election performances, Senate election performances. Now looking at the presidential election data right now, Bernie Sanders always polled behind Donald Trump in Arizona. I don't think there was a single poll where Bernie Sanders was ahead of Donald Trump. That was mainly because he was a progressive. Now, I understand progressives may be more beneficial to Democrats in other parts of the country, such as the Northeast or possibly the Rust Belt, but in the Southwest region of the United States, In polls that Bernie Sanders was losing in, Joe Biden was ahead in. That's mainly because he's a centrist Democrat and way more middle ground. A lot of those Mitt Romney and John McCain conservatives who were a little bit iffy about voting for Donald Trump that ended up doing it anyway, but not in full force. That's why the state rapidly shifted, along with demographics, which is just the perfect storm for a Democratic victory in 2020. As you move across the country, I think that Donald Trump, while being able to carry some of these states, I think that it is going to very much narrow up. States such as Georgia, I could very well see being lean. I normally characterize it lean, but I am very much considering moving it over into the tilt column in my next projection if this continues. If the increase of Democratic support amongst, not necessarily Democratic support, but African-American turnout in primary elections, number one, Georgia had more Democratic voters than Republican voters. That did not happen in 2016, or has not happened in a very long time, at least before the Republican flight from or the Democratic flight from the South. But other than that, when you look at Georgia itself, I think, number one, voter suppression will play into a factor in this race, whether it's intentional or not. I think that Georgia will probably be one of these states that does have it specifically, and it's a very large and very populous state. I think that it is going to be very important for the Trump campaign. If he loses Georgia, he's losing the election, absolutely. But Donald Trump, I think, still will narrowly edge out Georgia, but I think it is possible to move up to in the tilt column, or possibly a toss-up completely without any characterization. Joe Biden, I think, has a pretty good shot in Nebraska's 2nd district. I think it's enough to be a narrow victory. I don't think it'll be insanely tilt in terms of the tilt margin, but I still think that Joe Biden has a chance. For Donald Trump, I very well could see him narrowly winning in Iowa and Ohio. I think that these states definitely need a lot more attention from the Democratic Party. Iowa in that Senate election, if that one goes, I mean, you can only imagine how many seats the Republicans would be losing at that point. But Iowa, I think, could go to Donald Trump very narrowly. Before I had this one as likely, and then I had it as lean, and now I'm having it as tilt. So if this continues through Election Day, it is possible Biden wins Iowa. I understand in 2016 it went to Donald Trump by a very large margin, as did Ohio, but these states are typically national bellwethers, and they typically vote with the victor of the presidential election. Ohio specifically for 60 years now, perfect streak. And if they, I honestly think that Joe Biden does have a realistic shot at flipping those states back, especially with an Obama type of appeal to many of those voters. For states such as Florida and North Carolina, to be honest, to be 100% fair in this scenario, I think Joe Biden will carry both of them. I think it'll be very surprising. I think that a lot of, Republicans will be shocked to see both of those states go blue, but realistically, it's probably what's going to happen. North Carolina itself, number one, has a very large African-American population, 22%. In terms of 2008 turnout, 65% of black voters turned out over in 2008. In 2012, actually nationwide, black voters turned out at a higher rate than white voters. It's just the fact that they only make up 13% of the national population, which is why the impact isn't as great as it could have been if they did have the numbers in terms of the white population. So when you take a look in North Carolina, they, number one, are way above the national average, and I do think that turnout will spike in southern states specifically. If we're talking about a redo in sense of protests in terms of dating back to the civil rights movement, I honestly do think that the entire Bible Belt will probably be lit up in favor of Joe Biden. I think a lot of those counties that were, a lean red in 2016, and a lot of these states will have the same bright red on the CNN, MSNBC, Fox News electoral map on election night, but I think a lot of them are going to be, pretty bright blue, possibly dark blue in terms of a safe margin in a number of these counties. So for North Carolina, I think this one probably will be narrower than Florida, but Florida I definitely could see going for Joe Biden as well. With new voters added in Florida, and an increased minority base in North Carolina and most likely Florida, all of that would benefit a Joe Biden campaign, and I definitely could see Donald Trump narrowly losing those states. I understand that Donald Trump may have had a strong grip on them in the previous months, but now it looks like the election is shaping up completely differently. For Maine's 2nd congressional district, I think Trump will narrowly edge this one out. I think that Joe Biden will overall swing the state way further away from Donald Trump and possibly back to Obama-like numbers, but I'm thinking Maine's 2nd district could still narrowly very narrowly though, go to Donald Trump. I think maybe 1 to 2% in terms of his margin. So that finalizes the electoral map at 334 electoral votes and Donald Trump at 204. The flipped districts and states include Arizona, Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida. The states that remain the same in terms of swing states for Donald Trump: Ohio, Iowa, Texas, Georgia, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District. So Joe Biden, number 1, dominates in Hillary Clinton states from 2016 and wins over a number of swing states, enough to get an even larger margin of victory than Barack Obama's 2012 presidential election win over Governor Mitt Romney, now Senator Mitt Romney, who also has some relevance in the 2020 election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. If you want to actually decide my next election night in terms of the result, go ahead and check out the community tab. I have a poll posted for who you want the vice presidential nominee to be for Joe Biden and who you believe will win in each individual state, all 50 of them, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I will be turning that into an election night, possibly tomorrow night or the night after. And subscribe if you haven't already. Please consider joining as a member on my channel, and I will see you all tomorrow.